Hey friends, my name's Georgie. Such a warm welcome to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's episode, I'll be chatting with Leigh Ewin. Leigh coaches people around the world in the art of conscious breathwork, and he has spent years exploring breathwork techniques to aid in anxiety, pain, and stress relief, as well as sports and athletic performance enhancement. Leigh is originally from sunny Australia, but is based in the cooler climate of Finland. And he is a huge fan of the cold and all its benefits. He also has a background in freediving, and we got talking all about the human connection to water, building resilience, and the body's ability to not only survive, but thrive, and how we can tap in to those supernatural capabilities. It was truly such a powerful and insightful conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. Let's keep on building that strong breathing community. The more people tapping into the power of the breath, the better. All right, let's jump right into today's powerful conversation. I really hope you leave this episode feeling inspired and empowered. This is episode 38 of Just Breathe with Leigh Ewin. What's up, Leigh? How's it going?
I'm well, thanks. How about you?
I'm really good, thanks. Calling in from Finland, right?
Yes, sunny Finland right now.
Sunny Finland. Lucky. Finally. Very lucky. Well, how's life in Finland? What's that like? I've never actually made it there myself. It's definitely on the list.
Life in Finland's good. It's a good country. It's not when you're an Australian that moves to Finland. It's like there's a lot of things initially to like anywhere, I guess, that you have to kind of acclimatize to. No pun intended. But you just kind of get used to the cultural things, and even better, I've been able to find the benefits in all those things. You know, people say Finns are quiet. I've found the plus side or the upside in that. People say it's cold here. I found the upside in that too. So, you know,
yeah. They're quite a health conscious place in Finland. They're quite up there, right, on their health and vitality, healthy living.
Yeah, of course. There's like a huge biohacker community here. So like awesome. A lot of the biohacking, well, you could even say a lot of the stuff from Europe kind of stems around here, and then there's another pockets in the Netherlands and a bit in Germany and stuff. But some of the real influences in biohacking are from Finland. And of course, we have beautiful nature here. We have a lot of it's coming from this really organic, sort of natural place. You know, the sauna is a Finnish word in the English dictionary. It's the only one in the English dictionary.
Oh, that's so cool! I didn't know that. So, what took you to Finland then? I definitely want to dive into sort of your journey in terms of what brought you to breath work, how you found the Wim Hof technique, what brought you to being a Wim Hof instructor, and sort of really embracing the cold in the way that you have in, as you said, on your website, connecting it back, using the cold, to connect yourself back to your body. And I love that. I really love that sense of resilience, but resilience with softening intertwined with it, not just go, push. That sort of, that beautiful balance between being resilient and being in the cold, but then also connecting back to your sort of inner nature and your inner being. I think that's a beautiful equilibrium you've got there. So what started all this? What took you over to Finland? What brought you to the breath? How did this all happen?
Well, it's funny. You probably know more just as well as anybody else. It's funny that you look back on your life and you're wondering like, well, I've always been kind of into breathing on some level, right?
Yeah.
You kind of like trace it back, right? So, but in the immediate history, I would say that, you know, I was living in London, actually. I met a Finnish girl there, came to Finland, got completely like, whoa, what am I doing here? It's cold. All those things that I mentioned a minute ago, I kind of had to come to grips with those things. And the cold was just something that everyone had fun with me. Like they wanted to see the Aussie do all the stuff. So, you know, they wanted to, in a way, kind of make fun of me, to be honest, you know, give me some challenges, you know, like in a playful way. My work colleagues, more or less, you know, they just started having these they had Christmas parties where, you know, you ended up a little bit after a few drinks in the sauna and then to the lake. And that's what happened. I struggled mightily. Yeah, these guys were recording me. They were like really recording me and saying, hey, this guy, do you know this guy? Like, it was embarrassing to me. I'm like, oh my God, I can only like be in the cold for like a few seconds before I had to run away again.
Okay. So this all started as a pride thing, so you could hold your own at the Christmas party.
Exactly. That's exactly, for all the right reasons, you know, to prove everyone else wrong, you know, forget myself. But everyone
I was thinking of this deep, emotional, like spiritual awakening. Actually, no, it was just because I wanted to really keep impressing my colleagues at Christmas party.
You know, So it was exactly like that. And then the beautiful part of it was that through trial and error, through making the mistakes, learning everything, like wondering, like, am I gonna, like, have I really gone too far this time, or like all these things. I actually started finding these moments inside the cold where I was like, you know, it was obviously a very proud moment. The first time you're kind of in there and you're like, well, I'm not thinking like I'm going to die. I don't feel like I'm going to die here or whatever. It was a really nice, proud moment. But then also you get all those happy hormones. And then if you've ever tried it before, I mean, it's this moment where you're just, you're not thinking about anything else. It's like a bit of a escapism, really.
Right.
And you've got this beautiful nature too. Like, I'd only be doing it in the nature. So you've got this usually in the morning. So you've got usually a sunrise or not always the sun, but the light is coming.
Yeah, it's there.
It's there somewhere behind the clouds and the rest of it. And you just have these beautiful little moments to yourself. And for someone who's far, far away from their own family and friends from school and all the rest of it, it was just a beautiful little moment that I could carve out for myself, where nobody else is interrupting me, and even my own mind and thoughts aren't really interrupting. It's just sort of, this is me time.
Wow. And
of course the breath has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, of course it does. I was just going to say that focus, that resiliency that's required to sustain your focus, your attention, to even keep your breathing calm in the cold. Is that what brings that sort of clarity of mind, do you think? Because you have to focus so intently. I know a brilliant neuroscientist I was listening to talks a lot about the eyes and vision, and how when we focus intently on something, our vision goes from panoramic to portrait. And we're able to really listen inward and things come up that perhaps we couldn't hear when we're sort of busying around and you know, buzzing around as we often do in the Western world.
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, like, a lot of people, if you ask them, like, how do you meditate, or can you meditate, or like this, a lot of people have difficulty with that because of this reason. They're like, they're unable to
switch off,
switch off, or then they focus. Like, I'm the sort of person, for example, where if you just tell me, like, Leigh, don't think of the pink elephants,
right? That's the worst thing to tell anyone, though, is that actually, it's important to clarify that breathwork is actually not about switching off, is it? You're not switching yourself off. A lot of people think and compare it to sleep in a way. And even with sleep, even though the term is unconscious, you're not switching off. Right. You are entering a different zone of consciousness almost. I kind of like to think of it more in that way, because there's never nothing happening. It's just that your focus shifts, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the interesting part of that is like if you look at this, if you want to look at this breathing is like an infinity loop in a way. It's like this infinity loop.
The figure eight, right?
I've made posts about this before, you know, like I've shared this kind of philosophical view of it, or whatever you want to say, where you have this, you definitely have a physical experience of the breath, right? You can really sense things when you're breathing. Right now, usually when you say breathing, you're kind of like, okay, how's my posture? Am I breathing through my mouth, nose? How is it? Are my shoulders back? Can I use it? You know, all those kind of things. And then obviously you feel the things moving, the parts of the body, the diaphragm, the intercostal muscles, the chest, the belly, everything's moving. So it's a very physical aspect of the breath, obviously. But there's also this kind of psychological part of the breath as well, where you're kind of like actively thinking and engaging with those feelings and those movements and those sort of events that are happening or occurring inside the body. So you've kind of got these things that are one and the same, that are just kind of looping and intersecting with each other. And I feel like, at least I'm explaining it like this, that there's this kind of, when that loop kind of hits this one point and it just kind of connects the two, there's something in there that we still, I don't think we really understand it yet. I don't think we can really quantify, nor, we don't get it. And that's the beautiful part of it. It's this, that we don't understand everything about it. It's part of the reason why we keep coming back to it. It's part of the reason why it's just breathing, yet here we are reading all the literature, every book, everything we can find on breathing. We're digesting it so we can maybe one day get a little bit closer to what that thing is there.
Yeah, that's what I call bliss point. That's what you call. What do you call it? The magic what?
Magic shit.
Magic shit. I love that. Yeah, I mean, people call it the bliss point, the flow state, that beautiful equilibrium between energized and calm. And that's also sort of what I mean with the vision, when that vision goes from, well, arguably panoramic to portrait, but it's almost like you said, a continuous loop where, because you found such a hyper focus, you have this awareness at the same time, this expansive awareness, where you're still completely aware on a very deep level of everything surrounding you, that energetic field as well. It's almost like you can, to me, it feels like I can feel the vibrancy of nature, which I completely ignore when I'm just walking around day to day and probably thinking in my mind what emails I need to reply to, you know, what I need to do that day, when I'm going to eat, etc. Very surface level things. It allows you to go deeper. And is that what you find in terms of the breathing and the cold, in terms of helping other people and on your own journey, in that it allows you to go deeper in that connection to yourself?
For sure. And that's one huge part of it, right? And then the obvious one as well is like, you know, our bodies are kind of programmed. We're like looking for stasis, like homeostasis. We're looking for this, our bodies have this diagnostic setup where it's just trying to constantly look for information, you know, whether it's the temperature in the air, the temperature of the water, the incoming threats or dangers or whatever else. And any sort of like little hiccup along the way, or anything that, you know, like the cold spikes, you know, the alarm system goes off and we're like, like this. And as we know, that's not that reaction is not just for the cold. It's if a car's coming past, if it's someone scares you, if somebody disagrees with you, if you have a thought about a past trauma or a circumstance, the reaction is the same every time, and your body will react the same every time. And that's where we can introduce this like little beautiful intervention, which is literally the breathing, the breath. That's
regulation.
Exactly. We have the possibility to do that at any point. And it can go either way, right? We can, like this infinity loop, if we let it go in a certain way, we can really get into that infinity loop in a sort of negative way, where we're too much going into that
like spiral.
It's exactly a spiral. So so the cold was like one, let's say, possibility or circumstance where you can literally train that. You can train that mechanism. You can observe yourself, all the physical manifestations and psychological manifestations of, okay, you're in a threat, and you can literally, like a checklist, go through and be like, okay, control the breathing, like breathe deeper, relax into it, and tick, 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 tick down until you're in this, you've kind of, there's a level of acceptance. There's a level of like, okay, just let go of the thing, like stop holding on to whatever it is. And when you strip away all those layers, you're kind of just there, and it's just you with nature, or you with your breath. And that's the kind of, like, in a way, the profound values that you can get out of this kind of, well, treatment or circumstance, or,
sure,
you can call it whatever you want. Yeah.
That's profound in what you just said there, accepting the element that you can't control, which is the cold. If you're in a lake, you can't control the temperature of that lake or that body of water that you're in, which is funny because in the Western world, we have so much control. Even, the temperature of the room has to be just right nowadays, or the air conditioning has to be just right. Whereas when you put yourself in that situation, you have no control over the temperature of that water. If you're in nature, perhaps, different, perhaps, I'm sure there are stimulated pools out there somewhere. But if you're really going in nature, you have no control. Just finding full acceptance over that threat that you have no control under, but being able to sit with it and just be, that is immensely powerful. Just hearing about it is immensely powerful. So experiencing it, I can't even imagine the power. It almost reminds me of when you hear about people talking about, near-death experiences. They say they feel a sense of bliss right before they lose consciousness, because it's that full acceptance and surrender of there's nothing I can do about this.
Well, here's the thing as well, is that, like, if we look at that scenario of, like, drilling the hole out or digging the hole out, and then you're just like, in you go, that whole thing, that's one scenario, right? But just imagine, like, you understanding your own nervous system, learning how to down-regulate your own self, your own reactions, everything, basically. What happens if someone yells at you at work, or you get a bad email? I mean, it's exactly the same thing, right? It's like, I can't control this situation. And then you look at the macro level and, like, actually, I can't control anything what's going on right now. I can't control viruses and this one and that one and all the rest. It's like, I can't control that stuff. I can only, not even control, but influence my own reactions to everything, right? And try and try and act and embody the best practices that I can, so that I can be more conscious and be the best version of myself. That's kind of like the trick here.
Which in turn will be of more service to the collective anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything that is look, let's say like this, adding a conscious element to practically anything or all that you do is, like, generally speaking, a really good thing to do. There's so many things we're doing on a daily basis where there is no mind paid towards that whatsoever. We just, again, that's like ticking boxes in another way. That might be the bad way. It's like eating a meal and not sort of appreciating nor respecting where the food's come from and the work that's gone into it and all these sort of things, just kind of like this as one example.
Yeah, down to the degree of how we are destroying our own planet through pure negligence.
Just not understanding the intricate sort of beauty that's all around us, this kind of like quite delicate set of systems that are around us, So it's just about, and then on a just a humanistic level, just like seeing you, like I'm seeing you now, and I'm just like really like engaged with you, and just being here with you, and paying respect to your words and so on. These kind of things are really, there's a lot of, because of all the social media and stuff, there's just things flying around everywhere, and it's like, it's actually quite difficult for a lot of people as well. That's why it's an interesting concept to kind of, for like, minimize everything down. We're not saying clear the mind of absolutely everything. Sometimes it's just good to think of just one thing. Maybe it's the breath. Maybe it's just that one intention, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, well, it's almost coming back to simplicity and that idea of less is more, isn't it? In that, in this day and age, it's so simple that actually it's the hardest task that you will ever take on, is can you just focus on your breath for more than 3 minutes without feeling like you need to check your phone, without feeling like you need to be somewhere else or engage in something else? Most people, if you're talking about it, would go, yeah, of course I can. In practice, very, very difficult. The fidgets, the itches, the whatever. It's like, no, can you just be?
It's been
yeah.
like,
30 seconds, exactly. Yeah. And it's
notification.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about this morning, where I was like, so many people still almost reject the concept of breathwork because it's so simple. And I've heard the phrase so many times, I've been breathing my whole life. And I say, yeah, I know you have. But can you just be with your breathing? And do you know that the power that your breathing holds? Because it's immense. And it's something everyone has access to. There's no discrimination in breathing. It doesn't matter who you are, or what you own, or where you live, or what you have. Everybody breathes, so everyone has access to it. And it's the simplicity of it almost that I think scares people, but also almost intimidates people in a way where it's like the void of what, just the breath? It's like, yeah, just the breath. Can you just be with the nothingness of the breath and nature? Is that not enough for you?
There's a couple of things there probably as well. Like, well, first of all, a lot of people have this kind of, we've all gone through, all of us, I believe all of us, or practically all of us, have gone through some experience in life where we're short of breath.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's childhood asthma or croup, like I had this croup when I was young, and just that feeling of like, where's the next breath coming from? That's some place that you don't really want to be. It's all of your warning signals are going off, and it's like a really traumatic thing.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you've ever had you've something stuck in your throat, like whatever it is. So there's that kind of traumatic aspect to it, but then there's also a lot of people find it difficult to breathe anyway. They're not used to, we're talking always about, I know you're talking about it as well, like nasal breathing. Like, how can you breathe through your nose? You should be breathing through your nose. You say that to somebody, that's enough to send them running, because already they're thinking smaller holes here, bigger hole here.
Restriction, less. Yeah.
My deviated septum won't allow me to do that, all that kind of stuff. And you've got like warning signals going up all over the place for some people. So there's so many different aspects towards it. And then and the biggest one is also like, it's really, really difficult for someone to, like, if you're saying to somebody, hey, it's so simple, all you need to do is breathe, like just breathe for 3 minutes. It can't be that simple. It's like, no, you mean I can feel good by just breathing for 3 minutes? That's bonkers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it can't, like, we in our own minds, we manifest this huge issue. And actually it might just be so simple that all you need to do is breathe for 3 minutes. But to get that over that hurdle is the big thing.
Yeah, but that's the thing with the healthcare system today, right? Is they focus on the problem, not the solution. They focus on the issue and the symptoms, not the preventative or the cure. And it's even, I was talking to someone else about this today. We're talking about eating disorders, and how so often, especially in terms of young adults and children, if they're suffering from an eating disorder, they will be sent to a psychiatrist. And of course, they have to be dragged there because they're being taken there to talk about the problem. And then they'll go somewhere else and they'll get weighed and measured, and they'll be reminded that they have a problem. And it's like, well, couldn't we focus on the solution? Yeah. And could we focus on, even in that case, and of course that relates to so many other cases, but allowing those children to be children and play, maybe that might have a slightly different effect. And I don't knock, of course, the incredible work of a lot of psychotherapists and psychologists, especially in the way of eating disorders. But I do believe that a lot of our healthcare system is focusing on the issue and not the solution. And that they do some amazing, amazing, amazing work. But I do believe a new era of healthcare is evolving, where we're starting to see more integrative medicine, and where they are focusing on the root cause, addressing those smaller things before they turn into something chronic, where you then do really need some serious medical assistance.
And not only that, but so giving important. The tools to the people, right? I mean, that's the big thing.
Autonomy, right? Yeah. Autonomy. Yeah. And, you know, it sounds like as well, the cold really gives you that feeling where you're like, if I can control my nervous system, if I can regulate myself in this situation, what else can I handle?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a big part of it, right? I mean, obviously there's a lot of like, you know, chemical benefits, hormones, and things like that are happening as well, right? I mean, amazing things, but this fundamental issue, this idea that, okay, like a lot of people, again, this might be the biggest fear for some people, or the most uncomfortable situation you can put somebody in is in cold water. Like it's the nightmare situation for some people, and for them to be able to willingly do that and know that they can a couple minutes in here, no worry, and then they're, you know, breathing, all the rest of it. It's a very, very empowering thing. And you're right, it crosses, you know, the same practice just crosses through into other aspects of life, and just knowing that, okay, wow, if I just lengthen the exhale and I push through that initial shock part, I mean, where else can I do this, you know? Like when I'm about to give the presentation to my colleagues or in front of my peers or whatever. And
even right down to the point that it's like, hey, I am not my depression. I am not my anxiety.
You're not your thoughts, right? As well. I mean, all of these things you know, this is a big, you know, maybe it's a bit philosophical, but it's like, hey, we are not our thoughts, right? And this can be so messy up in here.
Whatever's going so on, messy.
All this electricity.
Yeah.
Well, you might as well make it a nice place to be. If we're going to spend most of our life up in there, we may as well clean it out, do some pruning, some gardening, and take the weeds out, and just make a nice little like a little Zen garden up there, maybe. You know?
Yeah, might make for a much happier life in there. I love that Zen garden. I'm interested to well, pun intended, dive into talking about the human connection with water, because I know you talk a lot about that. I know you're a free diver as well, right? And you have some experience of that, which of course is very much in the breath as well. There's a lot of breath retention there. And I've read a lot about this recently as well, in that, of course, we have an innate connection to water because we are water to a degree, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, like it's amazing, you know, like you watch a child and a baby knows, you can like literally, you know, we don't advise anyone to do this obviously, but you put the baby in water and it knows what to do. It doesn't drown, like it shuts everything, you know, because it's been in the womb, it knows, it has this connection, right? But then also, you know, I know you've heard me say this before, but there's this kind of, I mean, there's this ancient, if we talk about evolution, there's this, you know, we've evolved from these squishy little things, organisms that used to live in water, right? And even more crazy to think of is that oxygen was a toxin. We couldn't cope with that. Like we would have to stay in all these squidgy things, stayed in the water, because oxygen's a toxin. We have no way to do anything with that. Well, it's a toxin to us. So not only have we been able to sort of like put up with or withstand such a you know, an atmosphere, like the atmosphere itself, but we've actually built or evolved infrastructure so we can actually process that and create energy from the actual oxygen. Yeah. So it's quite fascinating. You think that's a really abbreviated version of that, of course, but
evolution, you know, it's incredible how far we've come.
Well, you're talking about resilience, right? I mean, that's not only resilience, but that's kind of like taking that and sort of integrating that, and then also like, you know, literally changing to not only cope with it, but kind of utilize that. You know, it's a fascinating kind of thing to really dig into. It begs the question, what else is there that you know, like what else have we been doing over time that have led to these things? Of which there obviously quite many
Yeah.
parts of the, like why we have brain this size, all the rest of it. But right down, like we still have this diver response. We have the mammalian diver reflex when we go down. We have this trigeminal nerve here where you I don't know if you've ever done any first aid before, but the first place you blow a little bit of air towards is here across the trigeminal nerve, 12th cranial nerve. You usually wake if a child faints, for example, you blow on across this nerve, and it might, it's very sensitive towards different temperatures.
Right.
What happens when we go under the water? Another one of these beautiful, evolutionary sort of things from the past. It slows the heart rate. How we use oxygen whilst we're under the water slows down and it becomes more efficient. Yeah. So that's why, we kind of do the face dunks with the cold water, because you can actually train that mechanism too.
Yeah, I read James Nestor's Deep. I read his book about freediving and all about the mammalian dive reflex. And it was just absolutely fascinating in that, I mean, all of these, I've read a lot of things. I haven't tried freediving yet, but it's the one thing that I'm just so desperate to try, because it really is an example of how we have evolved to not only survive, but thrive as well. Like you said, utilizing that oxygen to our best ability, but with no effort. It's actually an act of surrender to let the body do what it's capable of doing and what it was born to do, rather than sort of in the modern world where we've got a bit lost, where we're fighting against our bodies to try and force it into some sort of patriarchal norm that it is not natural for us. And so that's why the freediving fascinates me, I think, is that process that happens. Can you talk about the mammalian dive reflex for anyone listening who sort of doesn't know what that is a little bit more, in terms of, going down as you dive down? What is it that actually happens?
Yeah, so like just in context as well, I mean, like everything you've just talked about, whether it, resilience is coming up, right? And our bodies, like, they're so intelligent they're so intelligent, and they have all these backup processes, and they have these little, little systems, or these little key things that can like jump in when faced with a little bit of what many of us would call stress. Yeah. So these acute bursts of stress, and actually it's called hormesis, right? So we're talking about, when you go to the sauna, it's really, really hot. So what happens? What kind of hormones and what kind of, like, chemically, what's happening inside the body? How are the neurons and the synapses, the brain, how is it all connected?
The pH, how is it all regulating itself?
All of this stuff. And then and the cold as well. Then you've got, like, we all understand heat training, when you're training in the gym and breaking down tissue, and it's a stressor, and the muscle grows back stronger, and because it doesn't want to have to suffer and hurt that again. And then we talk about there's a few other fasting and things like that are included in this as well, where some really, really strong and very, very positive things are happening when you're fasting, right? But then, of course, breath holding is another one of these things. And it's like funny, because it's not usually without the you can't, you have to go through this little, you have to have this spike in the body, you have to have this kind of situation occurring in the body to get the reaction. And when we live in this world of comfort, when we don't want to do any of this stuff, it's too hot, like you said, temperature is regulated all around us, jackets, all this lovely clothing, everything, food is all around, everything like this. It's just so easy for us. And it's very, very rare that you would find yourself in these situations where you're kind of challenging any of these, homeostatic, situations in the body. Freediving is one of those ones where it gets really interesting really quickly, because, you need to be able to take a really deep breath of air in, right? Because you want to go down far or across or whatever. You want to pull the oxygen in, which means there's a very, very physical part of that as well. Obviously, we want the actual biomechanics to work. We want the rib cage, we want the intercostals, we want the diaphragm to be like strong and healthy, and being able to sort of like and let's say like this as well, the stress is the biggest one too, the stress and being able to calm and relax yourself whilst you're under there. So those things are the kind of like the foundation. But then we look at the mammalian diver response, which is basically when you dive under, you get this cold water, usually around the face, around the forehead area. For anyone listening, around this forehead area. Keeping in mind, it's the 12th cranial nerve, so it's connected directly to your brain.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get this cold, it can happen really quickly with just a little bit of cold as well. What it does is it kind of senses danger, and especially when you're holding your breath as well, it's even stronger. And you everything slows down. Every single thing slows down, and that's also why freediving is so enjoyable. That's why you kind of get this nice, peaceful, sort of relaxed, sort of and like this. But how you use oxygen changes whilst you're underneath. It's very, very efficient. It's using minimal amounts of oxygen, and if you're really engaging in this kind of longer or lengthier breath holds, of course, there's another reaction in the body as well, which the old spleen that we've been talking about, like we never really knew why we have these things, these spleen, and it turns out it's a blood bank. Turns out there's different groups of people around the world. Bajau Laut tribe off the coast of the Philippines that are 70-plus-year-olds that are still diving under the water, collecting, because they've been always like foraging for food on the seafloor. They have really, really big, not maybe that big, but 400%, 4 times bigger spleen than the rest of us.
Wow.
And that means that if you're doing these long breath holds, you basically, what happens is the spleen can contract actually a couple of times. And it senses there's a lack of oxygen. You get this splenic contraction, and it pumps hematocrit or highly, I always mess this up when I say this, oxygenated, highly.
Yeah, oxygen-rich blood cells, really oxygen-rich blood cells into the system.
Yes. The very best blood that you have in your body, straight from the bone marrow, actually enters the bloodstream, and it gives you obviously more time under the water for sure, but obviously it gives you more oxygen inside of your system at that time. And then it gets really interesting when you look at these things like, okay, so if we know that happens, do we want that to happen actually whilst we're under the water, or whilst we're actually performing the first breath hold, or do we want to do that prior to the free diving, or prior to any other kinds of training where we can already sort of like set the table, right? Set the table for your athletic endeavors with the really, really good amount of oxygen, because we know that also lasts many hours inside the system too. So it's quite fascinating when you look at freediving and all the possibility, like all these kind of little tweaks and little systems that are engaged from partaking in freediving.
And the guy you spoke about in the Philippines, how long would he hold his breath for?
That's a tribe of people. So these guys are like 5, 6, 7 minutes under the water.
Wow.
While they've got their little spear or whatever, however it is, and going down and getting lobsters and fish and whatever else. And
I heard about the women is it Japan as well, for they collect the pearls. That's an ancient tradition too, right?
These, to be honest, this particular tribe off the coast of the Philippines, they're a really fascinating one, because they've conducted the studies on them. So they've actually shown, they compare them to people on the mainland, and the number, like this evolution, it's actually now a genetic it's a, what do you say, like a genetic disposition that they're born now with larger spleens. So that's how long they've been doing it.
That is incredible. So that the body has adapted to their need to survive and thrive. Again, the body is so resilient in that it will morph itself into, I mean, it's almost emphasizing our connection to nature, right? That the body will morph itself into
your environment and
the requirements of the environment and the climate. And I mean, you even see that as such, you know, with the differences for the different places, of the differences in the color of our skin, or the, you know, the different, if I read Sapiens, a great, amazing book, and they talk about even the differences in kind of bone density and things like that, because people in different places need different things. And
brown fat that are cold, so the amount of brown fat that your body carries up in this part of the world is much different to that, you know, for example, Australia. So this is also like this is your body producing, like, it's basically giving you energy. You're walking around carrying this extra energy source just in case it's really cold, or actually because it is cold. It's like, so people are always laughing when I'm walking around with only just like these little jacket. Aren't you cold? I'm like, no, I'm pretty good actually, because you have the material, you have the fuel with you already.
Yeah. Well, how important is mindset in terms of that? Because do you think a lot of people almost sort of convince themselves of their own, I suppose, helplessness, in that they need all of these external things to survive, in that many people nowadays do speak of possessions as if they are survival tools, where it's actually like, hey, if you lost everything today and had to sleep outside, you'd be all right. you'd be fine.
You probably have to do a little bit more, you know, coaching, that you would be okay, but because a lot of people, it's the worst, you know, it's the worst.
But you'd survive, right? As in, you're made to survive. That's not the thing that's going to kill you. And a lot of people cling to their blankets and their jumpers and because of course there's a lot of fear associated with the cold. There's a lot of fear associated with lack of oxygen. Even the fact I find I reassure people a lot in my Oxygen Advantage classes, where I tell them the blood is already saturated with 95 to 99% oxygen before you even take a breath. So you actually have all that you need. Even going back to the fact that, you know, if you did go in, I had even a friend that was another breath worker that said, I'm going to go sleep in the forest for a night just to see what happens, just to see how my body responds, you know, because we are animals to a degree. We are nature. And again, we're just so much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
Well, I can give you one real, like, very kind of tactile and very like, this is not just to throw this in there, but a lot of people who, for example, talk about nasal breathing, like, I don't know, like, it's okay to say this, but people have a lot of excuses. Right? And then the funny thing was, I think I've probably shown these before, you know, these nasal dilators.
Dilator, yeah, they're great.
So we ended up, like, I didn't like the ones that were out there. Like, I tried a few of those and they were a little bit scratchy and didn't fit correctly. So I did some R&D or whatever you want to call it.
Awesome.
And made these ones, 3D printed those ones. Now, the funny thing is that a lot of people will say that they can't breathe through their nose for all those reasons. We kind of touched on it before. All a lot of reasons, and many valid reasons too. Many valid reasons. But as to your point, this is exactly the same as any of the things we just mentioned. Like, how long can you hold your breath? Like, did you know that you have residual oxygen inside your body? So it's not just about what's in your lungs. There's actually other, you know, as to so many things. There's brown fat. There's, you know, you can not eat food for days and days at a time and you're going to still be fine. All those kind of things. And at the end of the day, it's if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. It's the same with everything. And if you don't, you know, the possibility to regulate your own temperature, if you don't train that, or if you don't give your body a reason to sort of keep that pathway open, it runs on efficiency. It says, hey, I don't need to do that any longer. And the way that the body grows, things happening like these, you know, spleen that we just talk about growing bigger. Same with the nose, right? And just giving some people this takes away the excuse a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, that's the real like primary purpose of that.
Yeah.
Because once people are surprised that they do it use this sleeping for maybe, I don't know, 3 days, a week maybe, before they don't want to do it anymore. And they're like, actually, I can breathe through my nose again.
Yeah. And I'm reaping all the benefits as well, I bet. Do you have people that take their mouth whilst they have the dilator in as well, or not?
I guess I think so, but I think mainly people are just going with these ones. Like, people ask me all the time about the taping, but I think there's a lot of people are getting a little bit mistaken. They like to tape them. They like to.
No, just a tiny bit. No, just a.
I only do it vertical, you know.
Yeah, me too. I do a little. I mean, it sounds awful, but I say a Hitler tash and then just down a couple inches.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew. I know. As soon as you said that, I was like, she's going to say it. No.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no offense intended, but that's what because it's true. That's about how much I do, and it just gently keeps my lips together, and it's great, and it's completely revolutionized my sleep. I definitely used to sleep with my mouth just slightly open, and I wondered for years why I woke up with such a dry throat, and it really depletes your energy. It's those tiny things. But I know James Nestor as well, we've already mentioned him, talks a lot about the nose, that if you don't use it, you lose it, in terms of that it actually starts to close up. And it's that body, isn't it, responding as a survival mechanism, saying, well, you're not using the nose, so something must be wrong. So, okay, that's not useful anymore. So let's go to plan B, which is the mouth. But actually, it's just pure laziness and perhaps ignorance, and, which is no fault of most people's own, but with knowledge and that empowering knowledge that the nose is incredibly powerful. What's it responsible for? I can't remember the number exactly, but something 40-50 functions in the human body. It's crazy number. Yeah, it's I think it's around 40, but it's a lot of functions in the human body the nose is connected to.
About switching it on, right? It's about switching it on, because you'll find, the people that are not being like it's not as if they're not breathing through their nose only when they're sleeping. For the most part, right?
Yeah.
It's depending 24 hours a day that they're usually, the default mode is mouth breathing.
Yeah.
So we just kind of like putting under the microscope their sleep, right? Where we can try and make this intervention. It's like, hey, you know what? All you need to do is pop one of these little things there, or put the little Hitler tape there. And then, just close the mouth and just gently start breathing through your nose again. Or then if that's a little bit, that's probably second or third step, right? The other part is just, hey, check in with yourself during the day.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. Like when I tell people, when they're going for a walk, especially with the pandemic, a lot of people like to go for walks now more so, which is great. I'm saying, could you just check in, and can you sustain nasal breathing whilst you're walking along? How does that change your perception? You might notice the colors get a little brighter. You might notice your vision is a little bit more expansive. Just notice. You might not, but just notice and see what happens. And often many people will come back actually with quite a moving experiences, because simply by slowing the breath down, by time slows down a little bit, like when you said people go under the water, time slows down, the heart rate slows, the vagus nerve is stimulated, everything starts to get a little bit more chill, and the body is no longer under threat, so it can focus on the beauty of nature rather than just surviving. Like, are we all just mostly kind of walking through life now, just surviving? It sounds miserable.
Yeah, and you can just tell people, hey, you don't have to stop and smell the flowers. You can just walk along and smell them.
Yeah, and that's enough, Even what came up for me when you were saying, there's all the spleen, the different systems, actually, as well as the brain, is that concept of neurons that fire together, wire together, in that, if you continue to create that habit, that bad habit as such, of mouth breathing, over breathing, of overstimulation and adrenalized nervous system, that then your body will keep repeating it, because we are creatures of habit, right? And the body and the mind especially likes to repeat, as a survival mechanism itself. And I think maybe that's a wake-up call to many in this world of comfort, that it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It takes time.
Well, actually, I thought of something just now, right? So you're talking a little bit about when breathing is sort of like the idea of like breathing and having this kind of, in a way, very spiritual, you know, like having this meditative, like, whoa, kind of moment.
Experience, yeah.
It's not actually about like going somewhere else.
No.
Right. You know, it's about kind of like being present in the body and just sort of like understanding, understanding that you are the breath. You are actually the breath.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like if you want to look in culture, different cultures, the baby's born, the first breath is where the spirit enters the body, you know, and then obviously on the last breath is where the spirit leaves the body. And you it's a very wise practice. It's a very empowering thing to understand that you are actually each and every single breath. You are your breath. And as soon as you understand, like, people lean into certain things. I've worked a lot with people in these sessions where they kind of find this is where the connection is to your point, right? Is that they go to the default mode. If it's a little bit too much, they'll kind of, I don't want to say pass out, but they'll go unconscious, right? Because we're getting a little bit too deep now. We're going there again. Something's coming up, so they just kind of go unconscious, or they go somewhere else, or they might just have tears or cry, and then those kind of feedback loops end up becoming a default mechanism as well. Because it's like, hey, you know what? Anytime it gets a little bit too much, all I need to do is turn on the tears, and I don't have to do it anymore. I don't have to go there anymore. So
react.
Yeah, exactly. So we can kind of, what we're hoping, or at least what I'm trying to help people with a lot, and what I do help people with, I should say, is that understanding that, like, we lean into the breath. We actually lean into the breath. We don't hide away from that, and you just lean into those relaxing and like, breathing should feel good. It should actually feel really nice and really, really, really good inside. It shouldn't feel like a stress. It shouldn't feel like some labored action that we have to do, or here we go again. Let's see if it goes right this time, or whatever. It should nourish you, and it should be something that you can lean into at any point, whether you're in a deep practice or whether you're just feeling a little bit like, oh, damn, another email, or whatever it is.
Well, that has a lot to do with intention as well, doesn't it? It's like, what intention are you going in with? In that, even the Wim Hof practice, which is in itself a stressor, a form of hormetic stress, that, you know, can you go into that practice with the intention to almost glide through the chaos, to glide through the conflict that is coming up in your body, to dance with the conflict that's in your body and the chaos and the big sensations in that, you know, of course, I use the Wim Hof technique example because it's so famous and because you're involved with it, of course, but, you know, some of those sensations can be quite scary. They can be enormous. They can feel overwhelming. A lot of fear can come up. It can be an emotional release. But can you dance with it rather than running away, rather than having a default reaction like crying, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with crying, of course, but, like, you know, that default reaction that is an avoidance? Can you sit with it, and can you sort of, I use that term a lot in terms of, can you dance with it? Can you sort of, that picture of being, you know, sort of, there's a burning building behind you and, you know, chaos all around you, but can you just dance with it and just surrender to it? And there's kind of a beauty in that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, like, that's why we've been able to look at different practices, right? You know, looking at freediving. Look at simply at freediving. I mean, I don't know too many freedivers that are not actively practicing some form of pranayama.
Yeah.
You know, energy control. I mean, you know, we know what the prana or energy regulation is, the translation, right? Looking at how energy is basically your breath. Then also we're kind of looking at yoga, and we're looking at people, how they have command or control over biomechanics, the chest, how elastic their intercostals are, so they can really open up, they can pull the air in. We're looking at you know, you have to have some sort of cardio. You have to have you have to be performing some sort of interval training or something like this, where your aerobic threshold is increased, your anaerobic threshold is increased. There's tables where you're holding your breath, like mainly focusing on the amount of you know, O2 tables, CO2 tables. How do you breathe when you have like more CO2, and like how do you dump off CO? Like, oh my goodness, there's so many different ways. Like, and that's just for practicing one sport. Like like freediving touches all of these kind of things. And then when we look at the Wim Hof method breathing, like you said, it is a bit of a dance, because you do have there is a duality there, that you're breathing quite heavily, you're breathing quite like, and to be honest, it's an entry point breathwork technique for a lot of people. So it is actually utilizing mouth breathing, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we're not saying that mouth breathing is bad, but it's not something like, it's good for 1 hour of the day max or something.
It's fine for the incremental stages and for a purposeful practice, but we're talking about the other 23 hours of the day.
Yeah. And then, so we're basically saying, hey, breathe like in, out for 30, 40 breaths. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of like energy kind of created, and there's this kind of like, you know, you're going more towards an active state, but then you've got this retention where it's like, okay, nothing coming out through my nose or through my mouth, and just wait, just sitting, waiting until there's that first sign or signal to breathe, that your body really feels the need or urge to breathe, and then you inhale again, right? So we've kind of got like as to your dancing, it fits beautifully there, because it's literally dancing between this active and this sort of like, well, it's like going to the sympathetic and a little bit the parasympathetic inside of the same technique, in a, like, again, this kind of cyclical infinity, well, not infinity, but at least in that practice, it's kind of like harmonizing these two sides. And then we get that magic shit in there at some point, you know?
Truly, I often find it in the breath hold, actually, in the nothingness, especially because, of course, with the more vigorous breathing, you're switching off those chemoreceptors, those alarm bells to breathe, which is why, as we should always mention with Wim Hof, please never ever do the Wim Hof technique in water. It's really, really dangerous. Please only do it out of water, because real safety concerns there. Do it in please don't do it while you're driving. Like, really important to mention, anytime we mention Wim Hof, please don't do it in the water, because it switches off your chemoreceptors, alarm bells to breathe, and you can pass out before you realize if you're under the water. Whereas, you know, if you're lying on your sofa, it doesn't matter so much. But I often find that magic shit happens during sort of when you're holding your breath, and you've held your breath for that longer period of time, because those alarm bells are switched off to breathe, that you sort of let go of the control, because you're like, I don't need to know when I'm going to breathe. I trust my body to breathe when it needs to breathe.
And also, like, again, with you start to notice the different little signals that your body, like, it's a really nice connective sort of connection with the body that you get, because you start to observe what happens. You start to, at some point during the latter part of the retention or the breath hold, you end up, you find yourself like, oh, hang on, like the diaphragm's like pulsing a little bit. It's like, oh, okay. It's probably, I've probably got a little bit longer left, because at least the diaphragm's pulsing. You start to kind of like get, you know, you feel that little bit of a flush feeling sometimes. You know, all those little moments like that. And then just knowing that at any point, just at any point, you are in the driver's seat. You can actually decide when you're going to take that next inhale, right? Exactly.
And I want to dive more over the years into the Wim Hof technique. I'm dying to do sort of, a retreat at some point where I can really immerse myself in nature for a good 4 or 5 days and really explore that technique more. I've done a couple cold plunges by myself, but I've really truly only delved into the really cold showers and the technique at home. So a retreat is definitely next on my list, and I think it would just be Amazing.
Anytime you can do any of these things we're talking about, any of the, like nature just only enhances that. There's, to your point right at the beginning of when we started talking here, is that, you know, you take your shoes off, you know, like a lot of people like, I'm not saying I never use the shoes. Like sometimes it's so cold that I better use some sort of like water shoes or something. But the 95% of the time when I'm in the cold, I'm the guy that likes the mud between the toes.
Yeah, I want to feel it.
All that sort of stuff at all. I don't mind, you know, bits of whatever, leaves and whatever else flying around the thing. I love all those things. I'm kind of like, that's my dance. That's my dance when I'm kind of dancing around in the elements, you know.
Yeah,
and
I love
going
that.
from the hot, you know, we might have the sun, we might jump in the cold, we might have that moment in the -15 where it's like, you know, looking like a phoenix with all the steam coming off and so on. I like all those little every little nuance of these practices. I love those. And also, I can't stress it enough that when we're doing these, just breathing and just really understanding what's moving inside the body. If you have that intention, if you want to, or if you allow yourself, you can kind of connect with where the breath's going. You can live, like, it might sound a bit weird to some people, but you can literally feel like the cells are like
truly
energizing and they're powering up, you know.
Feel the blood pumping through your veins, but in an effortless sort of way. You can feel your heart rate slowing down. I totally resonate with all of that. And yeah, I'm interested to know, what does, sort of in a nutshell, resilience mean to you? If you had to summarize it into one sentence. Big question, but what does resilience mean to you as we sort of round this conversation up? I'd love to ask.
Look, I think resilience to me is, it's kind of being at like a bit more like at one with your surroundings, your environment, but then also knowing that you've probably got like actually you made the great point, knowing that if you go to the forest, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like having this confidence inside your own self that, hey, it doesn't matter actually what the environment throws at me, what my surroundings comes up with on that any given day, whether it be a pandemic, whether it be a lockdown, whether it be this or a broken leg or whatever those things are, a car crash, it can happen. And that stuff that we don't know, it's around the corner. But guess what? You're going to be okay. You're actually going to be okay for the overwhelming majority, right? There's obviously some really crazy things that can happen too, but understanding that inside of your own body, you've got yourself into this situation where, you know what, like if things like your level of deviation is greater, you know, you can withstand a greater level of deviation to what's happening.
I love that. It's like that. It's actually that core confidence, isn't it, that allows you to dance through the chaos, that where you're like, hey, and it's a practice of detachment as well, of that I could lose all of my possessions tomorrow, but I would be okay. I could, you know, and like you said, there are some horrific things that happen that especially, you know, if it's a horrific act that someone has done against you, and there's no excusing that, but it's having the resiliency to survive and then to thrive, as we've been talking about through this whole conversation. Can you know, not allow yourself to become your circumstances or to identify with them, but just to almost like the guy in the kayak, right? To just keep rowing along that river, knowing that you're going to be okay.
And I would also add as well that in many cases there's really empowering stories of people that are have these resilient stories and have these amazing like outlook on life, and you know what they're able to achieve physically or mentally. You know, these amazing things. I mean, a lot of these people have not only gone through the shit, but they've actually deep shit, right? Wait, like paddled through, like you said, maybe not even with the paddle, but they've turned those things into a positive. They've been able to not only learn from those things, but kind of like wear that on like on their chest, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been through this shit, and guess what? This kind of helps guide me now, you know?
Yeah, they've used their adversity as a tool for growth and a tool for empowerment
100%.
rather than a tool for strangulation, you know, which is a great point to end on. It's so relevant to the time in history we're experiencing right now, is that, you know, it's a respiratory, obviously the pandemic is of a respiratory virus. That will you allow it to strangulate you, or, you know, could it actually be the tool that you use to completely free your breath, but your body and your mind as well? It could go either way. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? If we have our opportunity right now to use that as a learning step, right? And if it's not taught us anything, it's like, if nothing else, it's taught us that we need to be more in control of our own health. We can't be outsourcing that to anyone or anything. If we are kind of responsible for ourselves, and we take on that responsibility like wholeheartedly, we're going to get ourselves in the best position. And these kind of things they're more unlikely to have such an effect on us. You know, that's the thing. That's the thing I wish for so many more people, you know, like
100%. I wish as well, sort of that awakening to the idea that you have a choice, that there's always a choice. And I say that almost tentatively because, of course, you know, someone straight away will say, well, you know, what about someone with terminal cancer, or what about someone with that? And it's like, well, when you get to that point, the power is gone, of course. And my heart breaks for every single one of those people, of course. But, you know, for those people that aren't there yet, can we make those different choices, perhaps, where less people will get to that point where they have no control anymore, etc. So I think it's a very important time right now,
100%.
where we can take our power
Well said.
back. Yeah, I think, and I hope, you know, people like you in the world are helping, of course, to help the collective to help them do that, and to breathe better. So it's beautiful work you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And vice versa. I mean, you know, this has been a really, you know, to be really honest with you as well, like, you know, I didn't quite get there when you asked me about it, but like, breathing was like, for me, I'm really fascinated by biohacking, all these kind of things, looking at the body like a complex set of systems, and saying, hey, how do we influence this little system here? How do we get the best out of it, or the most out of it? And actually how to do as little as possible, but get the maximum result, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of efficiency and optimization.
That is biohacking. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I kind of just, I got stuck a little bit at the breath. I was like, let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Let's go right back to the beginning. And it was like, oh my goodness, the breath is just so like, it's everything. It's actually everything. It's the
foundation.
It's the thin red thread that threads through everything. So
absolutely.
And it's, like you said, important time, and one that we can lean in on the breath right now, right this very second, and we can let it guide us a little bit through this turbulent waters as we canoe through this life.
100%. Oh, awesome. Where can people find you? Where can people access your stuff? I'll put it all in the show notes, but, you know, please plug away, and especially about your little nasal dilators. I assume people can get hold of those if they want to.
Yeah. I mean, like, so my name, basically, Leigh Ewin. You can find me, like, I'm pretty chatty person, so people ask me questions and stuff in Instagram, especially. I'm quite more active there than some other platforms.
Cool.
So Leigh Ewin, then of course leighyewin.com is my website, and of course actually this nasal as well, nasal.io. I came up with this little breathing, which is like quite familiar text to some people, but you know, this is like that's the element for air, right?
The infinity is the alchemist sign for air, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you know, just It's just a constant reminder to just breathe through the nose, you know, and yeah, that's a good thing. You find the nasal dilators on there and a few other little bits and bobs.
Great.
That will help people with their breathing, help you with the breathing.
Sweet. Well, Leigh, it's been, you know, better than I could have even hoped for. So thank you. I've certainly learned a lot. And yeah, I just, this is why I adore having these conversations. They're always so insightful and empowering. So thank you so much for being part of it.
It's been amazing. It's been really good. It's been fun.
Cool.
Different, unique too.